single human vessel, annihilates the Galactic Empire's mightiest fleet. The bridge of the human scout vessel, Horizon, was small and crowded with blinking panels, humming engines, and the occasional smell of recycled air. Despite its modest size, Mara loved this ship. It was fast, clever, and most importantly, human. "Status report," Mara demanded, her voice calm but firm. Lieutenant Rin, her navigator, glanced at the glowing display. "Sensors detect multiple capital ships, Captain. The Galactic Empire's fleet, and it's huge. At least 30 heavy cruisers, 20 destroyers, and wait," he squinted at the screen. "One massive flagship. That's Admiral Thrix's personal command ship." Mara's eyebrows lifted. She had read about Thrix, stories told by spies and intercepted transmissions. He was ruthless, brilliant, and utterly convinced that no one could match his fleet. 30 ships," she murmured. "Against us?" Rin nodded, his fingers flying over the console. "Yes, Captain. They'll be here in less than 4 hours. Their trajectory puts them right on course for the neutral system of Verdun Prime." Mara's jaw tightened. Verdun Prime was an innocent world, unaligned in the galactic conflicts. It had no military to defend itself. If the Empire attacked, millions would die. And the galaxy would look away, assuming humans were too weak to stop them. But Mara had never been one to follow assumptions. Humanity survived by thinking differently, by breaking rules, and by taking risks no one else would dare. "Rin, alert Dr. Vorn," she said. "We need that weapon ready." The bridge doors hissed open, and Dr. Elias Vorn, the ship's engineer and weapons specialist, stepped in. He was tall, thin, and perpetually nervous, but his mind was sharper than any computer Mara had ever seen. He carried a small, metallic case that hummed faintly. "Captain," he said, setting the case on the table, "the prototype is ready. The energy modulation sequence can bypass the Empire's shields, but I must warn you, this weapon has never been tested in combat. If we miscalculate, we don't have time for hesitation," Mara interrupted gently. "We either try or we watch Verdun Prime burn." Vorn swallowed hard, then nodded. "Understood. I'll handle the deployment." Mara took a deep breath. The situation was dire. One small scout ship, even with a prototype weapon, against the might of the Galactic Empire. It was practically suicide. And yet, for the first time in weeks, Mara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Humans were never the strongest species. They did not have the largest fleets or the deadliest weapons, but they were clever. They adapted. They found weaknesses where others saw only strength, and Mara intended to prove that, even now. The enemy fleet appeared on the sensor screen like a shadow rising from the void. 30 colossal ships surrounded the system, their sleek designs glinting in the starlight. At the center floated the flagship, massive enough to blot out small moons, with hundreds of gun turrets and energy cannons pointing outward. Admiral Thrix's presence was overwhelming even through sensors. Mara felt a chill but pushed it down. Fear had no place in her decisions. Rin reported quietly, "They're moving in formation, standard assault patterns. They expect a slow, easy victory." Mara smiled faintly. That expectation was their first mistake. Let them think they know us. Let them think they've already won. The Horizon slipped through the outer edges of the system, weaving between asteroid belts and debris fields. The small ship was barely noticeable among the massive cruisers, a shadow darting between giants. Mara's hands danced across the controls, adjusting thrusters, scanning for weak points, and plotting a path that would bring them dangerously close to the enemy without being detected. "Captain," Rin said, voice tight, "the Empire's sensors are adjusting. They've noticed us." Mara leaned forward. "Good. Let them see the shadow. They'll focus on it, underestimate it, and that's when we strike." Meanwhile, on the Empire flagship, Admiral Thrix stood on the bridge, his many eyes scanning the tactical displays. He was not human, but his arrogance was universal. "One human ship," he hissed to his officers. A single vessel against my fleet, how amusing. He waved a claw and the fleet tightened around the system. Destroy it, quickly. Let's not waste time with these insignificant creatures. Back on the horizon, alarms suddenly blared. Red lights flashed across the bridge. Mara's heart rate spiked, but her expression remained calm. What is it, Rin? Multiple energy signatures converging on us, he replied. They've locked targeting systems. Mara nodded. This was the moment they had prepared for. She tapped a sequence into the console, and the small human ship surged forward at speeds no alien ship could match. The Empire fleet's targeting systems struggled to adjust, their enormous mass and slower reflexes a deadly handicap against the nimble human vessel. Dr. Vorn activated the prototype weapon. A low hum filled the bridge, growing louder, vibrating through the floor. Mara felt the power thrumming in the ship as if it were alive. The energy could annihilate a large cruiser if deployed correctly, but if misfired it could tear the horizon apart. Steady, Mara whispered. Timing is everything. The first alien destroyer came into range. Mara lined up the shot, calculating angles, distance, and energy output with a precision no human could match without intense focus. She pressed the trigger. A beam of blue energy leaped from the horizon, striking the destroyer. The ship shuddered violently, shields flickering, and then exploded in a brilliant cascade of fire and debris. Rin whistled softly. They didn't expect that. Mara allowed herself a small, grim smile. No, they expected humans to be weak. That is their mistake. But there was no time to celebrate. The fleet reacted immediately. Turrets swiveled, missiles launched, and energy beams lanced toward the tiny human ship. Horizon twisted, dodged, and weaved, a single dancer between giants. Every move Mara made was calculated, every maneuver precise, every breath measured. Captain, more ships incoming, Rin warned. They're focusing on us now. Mara's gaze sharpened. This was it, the moment they had to show the galaxy that humans could not be ignored. Let them come, she said softly. We'll give them a lesson they'll never forget. The horizon darted closer to the flagship, weaving past cruisers like a needle through fabric. The Empire's ships tried to anticipate the moves, but their size and rigidity made them slow. Each strike Mara made with the prototype weapon tore a hole in their formation, sowing confusion and fear. On the Empire flagship, Admiral Thrix's face darkened. Impossible, he growled. One ship, how? Mara could not see him, but she could feel the fear radiating through the comm network. She knew they had underestimated humans. That arrogance would cost them dearly. Suddenly, the flagship fired a massive energy blast directly at Horizon. Mara calculated the timing, boosting the ship's thrusters at the last second. The blast roared past, missing by meters, and struck a nearby asteroid, sending chunks of rock flying in all directions. Nice shot, Rin muttered, ducking as debris rattled the bridge. Mara ignored him, eyes fixed on the flagship. The humans were small, but they were relentless. They had courage that no alien army could match. They had ingenuity, creativity, and fearlessness. Prepare for the next strike, Mara said, her voice steady. We're not done yet. As the enemy fleet regrouped, the horizon disappeared into the shadows of the asteroid belt, moving with deadly precision. Mara knew the next few hours would decide the fate of Verdun Prime, and perhaps the galaxy's opinion of humanity itself. The stars were silent witnesses to the impossible battle about to unfold. One human ship against the mightiest fleet in the galaxy. Everyone else saw a hopeless fight. Mara saw opportunity. And humans had never known the meaning of giving up. The horizon slipped through the shadows of Verdun Prime's asteroid belt like a ghost. Its hull bore small scratches from debris and near misses, but the human vessel remained intact. Captain Mara Kellen's mind raced faster than the ship, calculating angles, distances, and probabilities. The Galactic Empire's fleet was huge, powerful, and relentless. Yet here they were, one human vessel evading 30 capital ships and a flagship. "Captain," Lieutenant Rin said, his voice tight with tension, "the fleet is trying to predict our movements. They're adapting to us." Mara leaned forward, her eyes scanning the tactical display. "Good. Let them think they understand. Humans always have a way to surprise them." Dr. Elias Vorn, hunched over the weapon console, muttered, "They're fast, Captain, but their energy shields are still predictable. The prototype can exploit their shield cycles, but we have a very small window." Mara nodded. "Then we hit them in that window. One strike at a time." The horizon darted from asteroid to asteroid, each movement precise and calculated. One moment it was almost hidden behind a rock formation. The next, it emerged, striking a destroyer with a perfectly timed energy blast. The Empire ship screamed in alarm as another of their vessels exploded in a cascade of fire and metal. Rin gasped. "They're losing ships faster than expected. The flagship, Thrix, is getting angry." Mara allowed herself a brief smile. The humans' greatest weapon was their unpredictability. They did not fight like machines. They thought, adapted, and risked everything to find a flaw. The Empire, with all its experience and power, could not anticipate ingenuity in action. "Doctor." "Vorn," Mara said calmly, "ready the next sequence. We're going to push them harder." Vorn's fingers flew over the console. "The new modulation sequence will target the flagship directly. But Captain, it's risky. One miscalculation and horizon." "We'll survive," Mara interrupted with certainty. "Trust me, Elias. Humans survive by taking calculated risks." On the flagship, Admiral Thrix's many eyes widened in disbelief. "One human vessel, how can one ship destroy so many of my fleet? Increase firepower." "Focus all weapons on that scout." The fleet responded instantly. Energy beams converged on the small horizon, missiles streaked through space, and turrets swiveled with deadly precision. The human ship twisted, spun, and darted through the chaos. Mara's hands moved faster than thought, and the ship responded as if it had a mind of its own. "Captain," Rin shouted, "they've adapted too fast. We can't keep dodging forever." Mara's eyes narrowed. "Then we don't dodge, we strike where they think we won't." "Doctor." "Vorn, initiate the flagship sequence. Timing is critical. Wait for my signal." Vorn's hands trembled as he activated the prototype weapon, energy humming across the deck. The ship seemed to vibrate with anticipation. Mara's mind raced, calculating shields, angles, and orbital paths. "Now," she commanded. A brilliant blue beam leaped from the horizon, striking the flagship in a precise location. The Empire's massive ship shuddered violently, its shields flickering, then failing. The flagship's hull cracked under the sudden force, and a massive explosion ripped through one of its main engines. "Direct hit," Rin shouted. They're in chaos," the rest of the fleet faltered. Without their flagship to coordinate attacks, alien ships collided, their formations breaking. Missiles struck their own vessels, turrets fired blindly. Mara's crew watched, tense but determined. Humans had done the impossible. They had turned chaos into opportunity. The horizon darted closer, weaving between flaming wreckage and debris. Mara's mind worked like a clock, precise and relentless. She knew the Empire would regroup quickly. They had superior technology, numbers, and firepower. But humans had courage and ingenuity, and sometimes that was enough. "Captain, more destroyers incoming," Rin warned. "They're focusing on us again." Mara's eyes sparkled with determination. "Let them focus. That's what we want." Using the asteroid belt as cover, Mara guided the horizon into a daring path that forced several destroyers into tight formations. With a few well-timed blasts from the prototype, the ships collided, exploding in brilliant fireballs. The soundless chaos of space was painted with brilliant streaks of energy and debris. Dr. Vorn leaned back, wiping sweat from his brow. "I didn't think one ship could do this, even with humans at the helm." Mara didn't answer. She was already planning the next move. The Empire had underestimated humans, and that was a mistake they would regret. Admiral Thrix's anger was palpable. Impossible. One human vessel cannot destroy my fleet. Increase power. Target it with everything. The fleet's combined firepower now threatened to overwhelm the horizon. Beams lanced through space, missiles streaked like comets, and every turret swiveled toward the human ship. The bridge shook with every near miss, and alarms blared. Mara's lips pressed into a thin line. Prepare for evasive maneuvers and final strike. We can't survive a head-on attack, they're too powerful, but we can make them pay. Captain, the flagship's core is destabilizing, Rin said. It could explode at any moment. Mara's heart raced. She saw the opportunity. If they could lure the rest of the fleet into a trap near the flagship, the explosion could damage multiple ships at once. But it was risky. If timing failed, Horizon would be vaporized along with the Empire's flagship. Prepare the ship, Mara said, voice calm but commanding. We're going in close, follow my lead. The Horizon darted dangerously close to the flagship. Energy arcs danced across the massive ship's hull. Mara's heart pounded, but she trusted her calculations. Humans thrived on risk, on thinking differently, and on exploiting the arrogance of others. Hold position, she commanded. Ready the chain reaction sequence. Dr. Vorn nodded, his fingers flying across the console. Energy pulsed through the ship, feeding into the prototype weapon. Mara watched the flagship, timing everything with perfect precision. Now, she shouted. The Horizon fired. The prototype beam struck the flagship's core directly, triggering a massive chain reaction. The flagship's engine detonated, sending shockwaves through space. Several nearby ships were caught in the blast, exploding instantly. Rin shouted, "They're falling apart. Admiral Thrix is losing control." Mara allowed herself a small smile. The Empire fleet was no longer a solid wall of power. It was fragments of metal, fire, and chaos. Humans had done what everyone thought impossible. One tiny ship had disrupted the mightiest fleet in the galaxy. But Mara knew the battle wasn't over. The remaining ships were enraged, adaptive, and still deadly. The Horizon's shields were weakening and energy reserves were low. Every second counted. Prepare for full retreat, she said. We'll force them to chase us, exhaust them. Rin's hands flew across the controls. Calculating fastest route, done. Engaging thrusters. The human ship darted through the chaos, weaving between explosions and debris. The Empire fleet pursued, but with coordination shattered and morale shaken, they were no match for the clever human vessel. Hours passed like minutes. Mara's crew, though exhausted, remained focused. Every strike, every dodge, and every calculation brought them closer to survival, and to proving that humans could not be underestimated. Finally, the pursuing ships began to retreat, broken and battered. Mara allowed herself a long breath. "Signal Verdun Prime," she said. "Tell them they're safe for now." Rin tapped the comms. A voice replied, trembling with relief, "Captain, you saved millions. We thought we were doomed." Mara nodded, her gaze steady on the stars. "This is only the beginning. Humans do not give up. They do not surrender, and they are stronger than anyone believes." In the darkness of space, the Horizon floated, battered but unbroken. One human vessel had stood against the galaxy's mightiest fleet and survived. The Empire would recover. It always did. But they had learned a lesson that would echo through the stars. Humans were not to be underestimated. And Mara Kellen knew that the next battle would be even greater. The debris of the shattered Empire fleet floated silently in the void, like broken stars scattered across the galaxy. The Horizon drifted among them, battered but alive. Captain Mara Kellen stood on the bridge, her hands resting lightly on the railing, eyes scanning the remnants of what had once been the mightiest fleet in the galaxy. "Captain," Lieutenant Rin said, voice tight with awe, they're retreating. Admiral Thrix has pulled back the surviving ships." Mara didn't respond immediately. She had expected the retreat. The Empire's pride would not allow them to fight to the last ship, not when chaos had already begun to spread through their ranks. But retreat did not mean defeat, it meant opportunity. "Send a message to all remaining enemy ships," Mara said finally. "Tell them, underestimate humanity at your own risk." Rin hesitated. "Captain, do you think it will? I mean, will it matter?" Mara's eyes sparkled. "It will. Humans are small, but we are clever. We adapt, and we never surrender. That lesson is what will echo across the galaxy." Admiral Thrix, aboard the flagship that had survived the initial strike, seethed. His many eyes glowed red with fury as he stared at the holographic display of his shattered fleet. "One human ship," he hissed. "Impossible. How could a single vessel?" His officers exchanged worried glances. Even the Empire's most experienced commanders had never seen a ship destroy so much without overwhelming numbers. Fear began to creep into the ranks, a dangerous poison for a fleet built on arrogance and discipline. Back on the horizon, Mara had no time for celebration. "Doctor." Elias Vorn adjusted the ship's energy core, repairing minor damage from the previous battles. "Captain," he said, "the prototype weapon is still functional. We could strike again if necessary, but—" Mara cut him off gently. "No, we've done enough for now. The Empire will rethink their assumptions. That is what matters most." Rin looked at her, still in disbelief. "Captain, I never thought humans could do this. Against them, one ship, it's unbelievable." Mara smiled faintly. "Humans survive because we think differently. We risk what others won't. We see opportunities they ignore, and we never ever give up." In the days that followed, the galaxy began to take notice. Reports of a single human vessel annihilating the Empire's mightiest fleet spread like wildfire. Worlds once indifferent to humanity now whispered the name Mara Kellen with awe and respect. Entire systems reconsidered their alliances. Even minor powers realized that humans, though small, could not be ignored. On Verdun Prime, the people celebrated the human crew as heroes. Statues would later be erected in memory of the Horizon's daring battle, but Mara didn't think of herself as a hero. She thought of strategy, survival, and the relentless determination of her crew. Dr. Vorn was still amazed. "Captain, the calculations, the risks, it shouldn't have worked, but it did. Humans, you're incredible." Mara shook her head. "Not incredible, just determined and clever, that is enough." Back in the Empire, Admiral Thrix faced consequences. The Council of Species governing the fleet demanded answers. "How did one human ship destroy so many of our vessels?" they asked, their voices trembling. Thrix had no answer. His pride had been shattered and his fleet's morale had collapsed. Reports of retreats, lost territories, and insubordination filled his data pads. For the first time, the Empire realized that humans were not just clever, they were a force capable of changing the balance of power in the galaxy. Mara, aboard the Horizon, did not gloat. She knew the Empire would recover, and their revenge would be inevitable. But humans had made a statement. They had shown that courage, intelligence, and resourcefulness could triumph over raw power. Weeks later, the Horizon received a transmission from the nearest neutral system. "Captain Mara Kellen," the voice said, trembling with awe, "your actions have saved countless lives. How can we ever repay humanity?" Mara's reply was simple and firm. "Do not underestimate yourselves. If you stand together, think creatively, and refuse to surrender, you can survive anything. That is the true strength of all species, not just humans." As the message ended, Mara turned to her crew. "We've done something remarkable," she said quietly, "but the galaxy is bigger than this battle. Our work is just beginning." Rin glanced at the stars outside the viewport. "The Empire, they'll come back, won't they?" Mara nodded. "Yes, and we'll be ready. Humans never stop adapting. Humans never stop fighting. And humans always find a way." The crew of the Horizon spent the next few weeks repairing the ship, training, and preparing for whatever the galaxy might throw at them next. Every day, Mara reminded them of one simple truth: size and numbers did not matter. Ingenuity, courage, and the will to survive could turn the tide even against impossible odds. Word of the Horizon's victory reached even the most distant corners of the galaxy. Systems once subjugated or ignored began to question the Empire's absolute power. Merchant ships, explorers, and independent colonies started to see humanity as a force to be reckoned with. Even those who had doubted humans, the very aliens who had once laughed at Earth's insignificant fleets, began to prepare differently. Humans were unpredictable, humans were dangerous, and humans had just shown the galaxy what that meant. One quiet night aboard the Horizon, Mara stood on the observation deck, watching a field of asteroids illuminated by distant stars. The ship was still damaged, but it was alive, as was her crew. She thought about the battles, the risks, the moments when death seemed certain. And yet here they were. Dr. Vorn approached quietly. "Captain, do you ever worry about the next fight?" Mara smiled, looking at the stars. "Every day, but worry is useless. Fear is useless. We act, we think, we adapt. That is how humans survive. That is how humans win." Rin joined them, leaning against the railing. "Do you think the Empire will ever forgive us?" Mara shook her head. "No, but it doesn't matter. Humans aren't looking for forgiveness. We're looking for survival and for victory when the moment comes. And the galaxy will remember that." Months passed, and the story of the Horizon became legend. The humans' daring, clever, and audacious strike had not only saved Verdun Prime, but had sent a message across countless systems: underestimate humans at your own peril. Mara knew this was only the beginning. Humanity was small, but it was powerful in ways the Empire could not comprehend. One ship had turned the tide, but what would happen when the full might of humanity was unleashed? In the silent reaches of space, Mara's voice echoed in the minds of her crew and the galaxy alike. Humans survive, humans adapt, humans prevail, and one day the galaxy will understand exactly why. The stars, cold and endless, seemed to shimmer brighter that night, as if acknowledging a new power rising among them. A small human ship had challenged the galaxy's greatest fleet, and had not only survived but changed the future. The Horizon glided silently into the void, ready for whatever awaited. The galaxy would never underestimate humans again.